Because that's super discouraging when you put all this time and effort into an event and then it's just you. So there's a way to do it, and I'd love to share that more of that information. But in this particular event, I mean, think about it. Hopefully by the time you leave today, you'll be like, wow, I received value. I learned this, I learned that, I'm going to put this into practice, and it's a win for you. And hopefully in the same way, Paulette meets, 30 more people that didn't know
It's a win for me.
much about David Quigley. So it's a win for Paulette. And then Grant, it's a win for him because he just added value to Paulette's business, right?
Well, so now the thing is, you're all sitting here, or I would be, sitting here going, that's great, but what about endless referrals? That's why I came. Where are the endless referrals? But let's digest that for a second. If I need to use a lender or introduce my buyers to a lender, do you think I'd be more likely to use Vonda or less likely to use Vonda after the way she helped with this event, right? And if Paulette has an unrepresented buyer come into the model today and say, well, it turns out I can only afford $550, I can't afford this model, do you think Paulette would be more or less likely to be inclined to refer me after I've brought people to her model? So, it's all wonderful to add value, but the referrals come as long as you stop thinking about where they're coming from. So I think endless referrals are like true love. You find it when you stop looking for it. So in building more people, and meeting more people, I think it's my job to meet people. That's what I do for a living. I meet people. When I have friends that say, gosh, Grant, I'd really like, it's usually right when the check comes, by the way, and I'll be meeting with somebody for lunch and they'll say, and I'll pay for the check and they'll say, gosh, I'd love to introduce you to somebody who needs to buy or sell a house. Janet, my neighbor, just bought a house, and her sister's a realtor, I tried. No problem. Who do you know that I should know? My job is to meet people. I just like to meet interesting people. So I built a process to build that community in size and scope to help my business grow in size and scope. And I have a very specific follow-up plan, but what I've learned from coaching agents at the office is everybody needs to build a slightly different program based on who they are. But when I'm at a networking event, for instance, I'll talk with 10 people. I'll go home and I'll throw 6 of those cards away. You're like that person. This person seemed really one-sided. This person just wants me to sign up for their network marketing thing. But these 4 people are interested. And then I'll send a thank you card to all 4 of them, handwritten, that just says, it was great to meet you. I loved learning X, Y, and Z about your business. I'd love to grab coffee sometime. And then a week later, I simply reach out and say, let's grab coffee. And the words that I use are important because instead of saying, let's grab coffee, I'd love to tell you all about myself and how great I am. I say, let's grab coffee. I'd love to learn more about your business and how I might be able to help. I know a ton of people are moving into the area based on what I do for a living, and I was really intrigued by what you had to say when we met. If I really am. If I'm not, I don't call them. And I'd love to know how I might be able to help your business. And that works really well. In the book, Endless Referrals, which Bob Berg also wrote, but it turns out to be more of a networking book, he uses the magic question, which is, how do I know when I meet somebody that would be a great referral for you? And it tells somebody at that networking event that you're thinking about them and how you can add value to them. It sets you completely apart. I've had conversations with people where they've gone on and on about their business, and then whatever program starts, and they'll say, wait, but I don't even know what you do. And then I know I've done my job, right? Because what we do as realtors is we come into the room, hand outstretched, like give me leads, give me buyers and sellers, instead of hand outstretched to help. And I think that that's how we build a community that's a lot more fun, is we focus on how can we meet with people that we really know, like, and trust, and how can we add value for them. So anyway, I have a very specific program that I put into place where I have, and it's simply just a matter of slots on my calendar where I'm making sure I'm spending time at events or deepening relationships, in smaller groups, one-on-one at lunches, and I'm focused on How am I making sure that I'm adding to my group? I had 3 people in my community this year die from cancer. It's life. I mean, if you know enough people, it's terrible, but if you know enough people, people die. And so you've got to feed that community list. That's just the way it is. People move away. You help them sell houses, they go away, and all of a sudden your community has dropped a little bit. So I'm constantly meeting new people and also upgrading my list. So I'm always making sure that that community is like a living organism to me. And I imagine, if the world was going to go away tomorrow, and I could only take a certain group of people with me to Mars, this is the group I want to take to Mars with me. And they don't all have to be best friends, but they all have to bring some value to me as well. And they have to be in a place where I can add value to them. So God knows I can't fix anything. So I need to make sure I've got a plumber in there, and I've got a builder in there, and I've got a carpenter in there. But we need to make sure we've got a community around us that we really know, like, and trust. So the law of compensation, to me, I looked at my year and said, I had 150 people in my community. This is how much I did. If I want to double my business, I need to add another 100 at least. Maybe double, but it doesn't really always work. It's never linear. So how am I going to do that? Well, I need to meet. So instead of how many dials do you have to make for so-and-so, how many people to answer the phone and all that old business, it's more about how many people do I have to meet typically before somebody kind of makes it all the way to my community. Because I meet them at a networking event, I sort through that list, then I go to coffee, and then if I like them at coffee, which is kind of rare, I'm not kind of made for everybody. I'm not one of those everybody's my friend kind of guys. So if I like them at coffee, then we go to lunch. And at lunch, when you're with somebody for an hour and you're breaking bread, you get an opportunity to go a little deeper. You really get to know somebody. And at that point, usually, somebody either kind of graduates into becoming a part of my inner circle or my gated community, or maybe I put them on an email-only list, or just leave them be for a bit to see what happens, see if it percolates. So that's, and there are a lot of programs for adding new communities, so if anybody wants ideas for how to do that, I'm always available to talk about that. There's no excuse for not being able to do that. And by the way, I meet people doing things I love, because then I get to know them more. So I mentioned I'm on the board of a nonprofit. I really care about what we do for work there. But now anybody who's on the board with me, we naturally have something we really care about. So again, it's another win-win-win. We're helping our community, and we're working together with people that we like. So I ride horses a lot. So I meet people at riding horses all the time. And it works out really well. So by the way, building a business like this gets to be really fun. And that's why I said up front, it's a much more fun way to build business instead of on the phone lead generating 3 hours every morning.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Where are you stepping out to meet people? Are you looking for events to be a
So,
part of?
so you'll notice if you get involved with enough things that you care about, there will always be events. And so then the hard part is just to say yes.
Okay.
I canceled I decided not to go to 4 ugly sweater parties this year because there were so many ugly sweater parties on my calendar. And so there's a time when you need to step back, but there are always events. So I think it's more important to find out what are the things you really care about, what are the things that you want to naturally be engaged in. If you are really into going to the gym, how do you build a group of women or men around you that work out together Mondays and Wednesdays at 6:30 or whatever that might be? And how do you take something that you love anyway and turn it into something that's a good business builder? So Allison, who's in the room, I tell Allison's story all the time. Raise your hand, Allison. So sorry I didn't embarrass you. I call Allison the slowest, highest paid professional runner in Boulder. And that's because Allison has a running group and they have a great time and they're just doing it for fun, but she has built a really great business from the people that she's met through that running group. That's a great life. Where else can you make the kind of money we can make and do it while running or riding horses or fly fishing? So that's a little bit about building the business. But again, the law of compensation is really about, if you have 30 people in your community or 50 people in your community and you want to earn 300 grand, those better be incredible relationships those better be some multiple referral people. Otherwise, you need to grow the size of your list. And the size of your list, and I'm calling it a list community because you all use different terms for it. The size of that group will be determined by you, and it'll ebb and flow, and you'll find the right place for you. So it's not about a special number, but it is. I mean, I can tell you, if you want a couple $100,000 a year, you need a couple hundred people on your list most of the time.
Something that we do, because I think it's like getting from, what do you do to get from that point where you first meet someone to the point to where now they're in your community? So what has to happen in between there? So once you have met and you identify that this is someone that you click with and you want a relationship with, and you talked about having coffee and then having lunch. We have something we call a 10 by 10. It's basically 10 touches in the first 10 weeks. So we want to intentionally be involved, and we know that not every person, that gets to that list, getting onto the 10 by 10 campaign is going to necessarily be that connection that's going to be in our community. But it's that date. It's almost like dating. It's the dating stage, and so it's maybe meeting them the first time and feeling like, feeling instead like, it's kind of like, okay, if I can say this, hopefully it's not offensive, but it's like if you met someone and said, hey, you want to sleep together, it's like, you just met them, right? It's like.
But we do that all of the time. I mean, all of the time. We have no game.
Yeah, you meet someone and go, do you need to list your house? It's like, asking them Tuesday, right? So one of the things though, have a plan, and it's pretty easy to do. But it may be like right after we've met them, sending a thank you card, as you mentioned. We like to then, the next week, send a book, one of our favorite books. Sometimes it's Go Giver, actually. But send a book, just I was thinking about you and, thought you might enjoy this book. It's one of my favorites, and then it's maybe the next week is a phone call. Maybe the next week is coffee. And so we have this 10 steps, and so it lasts for about 10 weeks. And so through that process, then we know this is someone that's going to be a friend. We want to be friends for life. And so have something like that where you kind of decide what are the 10 things, and then Juliana basically manages it with an Excel spreadsheet. And so just sit down and think about what are the things that I want to do in that first 10 weeks and touch them and reach out to them. 1 week it could simply be an email, but it's staying in a relationship and building that relationship there in the beginning to see if they are that person that goes into your community.
And that's a great segue. So,
Before you start, I just want to make sure we got everybody. Did we miss anybody on the crepes? Everybody got one?
dessert crepes.
Okay, go ahead, Gren.
So that's a great segue, because there's one piece to that you do that you just didn't mention. So let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
The next law is the law of influence. And your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. And it's all about, what I say is, instead of being top of mind like we're all taught, I say we've got to be top of heart. So not just at the top of somebody's list, but as they think about people they care about, we want to be on that list. And one thing that you guys do, and one thing that's really important in that program is, instead of it being like I don't want to use the exact term, but like an 8-week, 8-touch system or whatever other companies might teach, instead of it being about, I want them to think of me as an agent, I want them to think about me as a person that they really like. And that's what you guys do during that process, is you add value and show you care in such a way that people are really attracted to you. And it's a great way to be. Now again, I have to say again, it's really important to know, for me, you don't go into that program unless I genuinely click with you. Otherwise, all of this is a waste of time, and it's just like everything else. It's just like another sales program. So it's really important for me that you've got to be somebody that I really click with and want to add value to. Because otherwise, all I'm doing is trying to push on a lever to receive the prize. And as soon as you're in that game, you've lost. You'll do a couple deals a year, but you're not going to have a really great, abundant business, and it's certainly not going to be fun. So even if you are really good at that push and lever game, and some people are, you'll burn out in a couple years. And you can think of people who are at the top in your office for a couple years running, and then they fade away, because they burn out. It's no fun to be that way.
You're also never gonna stay in touch with people you don't like.
Exactly, you're not gonna do it. You're gonna look at that list, and you're gonna say, no lunch this time. And so what I do, I have a rule, I actually print out my list when I invite people to events. And actually, this is a great segue. So I have a yearly appreciation plan, and our office does, we have a party in the park. We stole the name from Jessica Uphoff's Party in the Park. That's such a great name. We have Party in the Park, which is our client appreciation event in the spring. We have Fall Fest, which is our client appreciation event in the fall. We're working on a happy hour in the winter. And because of that, we have a few events that we can invite clients to. And the magic in that is, who here likes receiving marketing materials? No? Nobody? You know, who likes to receive invitations to fun things? Yeah. So instead of marketing to people, we send invitations. Hey, I'd love to see you at this event. And then we follow up with phone calls. And what I do is I print out my list every quarter. And I pay attention. And if I come across a name, and I think to myself, I hope they don't show up, then maybe they need to not be on the list, right? So I'm really honest with myself about, you know, what that list looks like. I think that's really important. Because then, abundantly placing their interest before my own is easy, because I truly, genuinely like them. Otherwise, it's a job, and I don't like to work. So also, the other way to add value is to focus on the long game. So abundantly putting other people's needs first, example would be the Urban Peak Board that I'm on. Again, I care a lot about the organization. I'm there because it's a cause that means a lot to me. I don't believe that kids should be homeless. I just think that that's not cool. So I'm engaged in that organization because I care. But naturally, I meet more people that care about the same thing. And in fact, I bet 30% of my community are people I've met through that organization. And there's some great people to know. So that's worked really well for me. But also, I think what I've learned is, I was actually on an executive committee call this morning, thinking to myself, why am I on an hour and a half meeting when I need to be getting ready for this class I'm supposed to be teaching, and I still am in those old ways of thinking, and I'm still thinking to myself, why am I wasting my time with this? I should be working on my career. And somebody said something, there's this executive lady she's so amazing. She runs a really, really big organization. And we were talking about some topics on the call, and she was spinning some wisdom on the call that was so amazing, and it taught me so much. And so right when I think, oh, I'm giving too much, or I start to get selfish, here along comes this amazing gift to me that I can use in my own business. And so, what goes around comes around is super trite and overused, but it's really true. It's really cool, because as much as I can share my expertise with that network, they can share theirs with mine. And sometimes, I think we lose so much value that's offered to us and right in front of us, because it doesn't show up as a buyer or a seller. And I think as long as we can put that aside for a minute and think about the value that's presented to us, our lives become so much richer. And by the way, the buyers and sellers, they come. It's very profitable too.
Mm-hmm. When I think about putting others' interests above your own, think about when, are there times where you go out on a listing presentation or you meet a buyer and it is a relationship of yours, and then they end up going with a different realtor? Has that ever happened to anybody? Yeah, same with us. We're a lender, and they go with a different lender. How do you respond? I think that when you really care about the interests of the other person, because I'm sure that we've all seen it and maybe been there, but where it's like, what? Why did they go with that person? And yet, really, if that's our response, maybe we're not necessarily thinking about that. Maybe there is a reason, right? And we don't, maybe sometimes we never even find out the reason. But, there are times where you may be meeting with a client, and for whatever reason, you just know it's not in their best interest, or, there's something else that's better for them, and that you are okay with that. And that I think that when we are in that place, one, it makes us happier, but also I think that, as Grant said, that the right people do come at the right time. And so just being able, to have that attitude. And then one other thing, and I want to tell this kind of a funny story. I think another thing of just putting others' interests is thinking about, we kind of talked about celebrating life, but, celebrating birthdays. I think it's really important to have some type of birthday campaign, some type of plan in place so that you can remember that special day. And I'm going to tell a story about a realtor. His name's Joe DeVito. Does anybody know Joe? Yeah, usually a lot of people, when I ask that question, know Joe DeVito. He's been in the business for many years, and just a great person, him and his daughter Amanda. And so I met Joe 15 years ago probably, and he has actually sent me a birthday card, and my husband and my 3 kids, and we also get an anniversary card on our wedding anniversary every year for however long, 12 to 15 years, and a phone call.
Wow.
In fact, sometimes it's like, why is Joe calling me? Oh, it's my anniversary. It'll be, oh, it's one of the kids' birthdays. And so, just that, I think about him, and it's funny, this is the funny part of the story. So, I have a 26-year-old son who, when he's about, I don't know, he's probably 16, and we were sitting on the couch, and he's opening his presents and opening his cards, and one of the cards in the stack was from Joe DeVito and the Dreammakers. And so he opens up the card, reads it, and afterwards I was just like, oh, hey, do you mind if I keep that card? And he's like, why? And it's like, well, I have this card system that I recommend to people, and I like to show them examples of how other realtors are using it. And he goes, oh, he's a realtor? I just thought he was some uncle. Because he'd been sending him cards for 5 years on his birthday. Who else remembers your birthday? Except for your mom or your uncle or your grandma, right?
That's awesome. And again, to your point about Facebook, I try really hard to send a text message at the very least, if not a phone call, rather than a Facebook, status, because you just get lost in the crowd. And if you can do all of it, great. Something's better than nothing, but a card and let's go to lunch is really cool. And I like to celebrate birthdays more than the holidays. For one reason, because everybody celebrates different holidays, but also, think about the stack of holiday cards you get. And it's really easy to stand out on birthdays because hardly anybody sends birthday cards.
And hardly
So-
anyone sends handwritten notes,
no,
and it
that's
blows
right.
me away.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got a thank you card for a sympathy card I sent to a neighbor,
wow.
which just
Yeah.
really touched me.
Yeah.
But honestly,
Yeah.
until I started when I started doing ninja classes and
Yeah.
started doing it, I'm not good at doing 10 a week. I
Yeah.
mean, some weeks.
Yeah.
But
it's
it
good. It
blows
makes an
me
impact.
away how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, I've already started to get, thanks for the New Year's cards I sent out. It's really fun. So the second to last law is the law of authenticity, and it says the most valuable gift you can offer is yourself. And this is easier said than done. And actually, for me, I had to go through a ton of life coaching and personal development work to really get this and really make this work. But people want to buy and work with people. We don't buy from businesses. We don't want to work with businesses. We want to work with people. And in our business, in real estate, there's a whole lot of trying to make your 2-person team look like a big corporation. And I think that's a big mistake. I think that what we really want is to work with people, authentic people. And so, but for me, I had to go, just to be really fully transparent, my real estate business didn't blow up until I got to the point where I realized, all right, I'm supposed to be with people, I'm supposed to create relationships with them, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go to lunch and do that. But then I had to be honest with myself and realize, I don't like the person that's showing up. Like, I don't feel good about who I am. I don't feel good about offering myself, Grant, to this person in front of me. And so what they were getting was Grant the Realtor. And, I always say to people at Spaces, be a person that happens to be a realtor, not a realtor that happens to be a person. And I was just being a realtor that happened to be being a person. And it took me a lot of personal coaching and a lot of personal development work to be okay with who was showing up. And as soon as I was, and I was able to be authentic, it made a huge difference. Because when you're vulnerable with somebody, you open up a channel of communication and connection that goes way deeper than anybody's farming postcard ever could, right? So you start to create real, genuine, lasting relationships. And one of the books that changed my thinking around this, and you should write it down, is called Fierce Conversations. And what's that? And Scott Sammons, who's my business partner, is sitting right there, teaches Fierce Conversations. He's actually certified to teach it. And we should, certainly invite you if you're interested to take that class. It's amazing. But in Fierce, Susan says, coming out from behind yourself and into the conversation. And when I read that, I was like, wow, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And what I realized is I was doing the exact opposite. So I was going on all these lunches, I was spending time with people, I was going through the mechanics I was being taught in this coaching program I was in about what to do. And I was focused on all the doing, but I wasn't focused on the being. And as soon as I became authentic and real with people, it changed everything. And it, again, makes life so much more fun. The cool thing is, none of you can be me as good as I can be. I dare you. You can't do it. And the other cool thing is, I'm not for everybody. I am very distinct personality. I have lots of stuff going on that you can be unhappy with or happy with. There are plenty of reasons to like me and dislike me. And so I'm not for everybody. So there's plenty of room, and nobody can be a better you than you. So, my challenge to you on this law is to figure out how do you become the best version of yourself. And by the way, that has nothing to do with being the perfect version. I wasn't going to start teaching classes to realtors until I lost more weight, right? Like, who cares? There's always something that's not perfect. So don't wait until it's perfect. Go out and be with people and be authentic.
It reminds me, when you think about being authentic, being yourself, doing what you love, Grant was talking about being a part of organizations that, he's passionate about, and that's where he meets people. And, I was thinking about Misty here. This is my sister, everybody. She's not going to come to classes anymore because she's going around. But Misty is a very successful realtor. She's in third year. Just has done an amazing job. And I really do think a lot of the reason why you're so successful is because you naturally have the things that we're talking about. And I remember when she first started her business, and she came to a class that Jessica taught, and it was kind of talking about these kind of things and doing the things you love and how to build your business through relationships. And I just remember after that class you saying that, wow, I like this so much better than the training I've been getting, that was in a company that she was with, because that was telling her to do things that were not her, like she didn't like open houses, and yet she was being told she had to do them, and she was like, wow, you mean I can do the things I love and be successful? And so anyway, I just think she's such a great example in her third year of doing amazing by just doing what she loves and building those relationships.
And if this isn't you, that's okay too.
Yeah.
I can think of a guy I know from early on in my real estate career who, he would just huddle down in a dark office by himself and convert business all day long by computer. I mean, it's just how he did it. And I don't think he could do it that well. He's not in business anymore, so that says a lot. I don't think he could do it anymore. I don't think that model works as easily, but it's still out there, and there are other ways to build business. So that's what's cool about real estate. There's so many different ways to make money. I just think this happens to be really fun and a lot easier. Go ahead.
So being authentic and all that, I feel like a lot of my counterparts and myself do that. How do you, when you find yourself in a situation where you feel like you've done that, and maybe I haven't, because you always think you do maybe better. So I had that thought when you were talking, but and you get to where people do not respect your time, like you're already in it, not somebody where you're
Right.
thinking about putting in your community. Maybe you just jumped in and you have all these people, and you know, they just don't respect your time, or maybe they don't give you back what you're giving them in terms of just respect, or calling you, you know, at 9 o'clock at night and you're just running around, you know, how do you?
So different topic, however, I will tell
But
you
it's not because you're
quickly,
being vulnerable.
I will
That's
tell you
just
quickly that people will treat you the way you train them, you will allow them to be treated. So if you answer your phone once, you've taught somebody, and by the way, I do, I think it's okay, for me it's okay, but once you answer the phone once, you can't complain if people are calling you late, so.
But even if you meet at a property kind of thing and they're 30 minutes late and they do it so, but you're already in the, you know what I mean, like,
Yeah,
you
it's
feel kind
hard.
of stuck and then.
Again,
Maybe they're not a person you wanna work with.
yeah, I mean, I don't
And
think,
then you just cut it off, you
Yeah,
know
they
what I
are.
mean?
So
Like,
there have
Yeah,
been-
you know what,
Sometimes
there are people
hard.
that are not nice, and their time sucks, and you know what? When you sit in your car and wait for them for 40 minutes repeatedly, maybe I'm your ideal client, and maybe you're not on your game when you meet me after them.
if
So
I,
you're hurting your other clients too by wasting your time with people who are not respectful.
it's true, and I would say, you know, that,
Sorry.
it's okay. I mean, for me, you have to set your own limits, right? So for me, if it's 20 minutes and I can't get a hold of you, I'm not there when you get there. But I'll wait for an hour if you text me and say, this is what's going on, and, right? So I think you've all got to set your own boundaries. But I will also say, if you focus mostly on being, it's like any other relationship, you know, you've got to give 100%, right? If you're married in this room, and I'm not married yet, but you have a great relationship with somebody, you've got to focus on giving 100%. It's not about, I'm going to meet them 50% of the way. It's about, I got to be 100%. And that's how you do it as an agent. And I think mostly what you'll find is, if you practice this, you will have enough abundance that you will see those people earlier on, and you'll head them off, you know, and maybe suggest they work with somebody else. You know, yeah. So the last law is the law of receptivity. This is the toughest one for me. This is a law that says, when you tell me, thank you, Grant, that was a great class, I don't give you a list of all the things I know I screwed up. You know, it's really hard. It really is a hard thing for me. And we did a really cool, when we were with Bob Berg, it was a small room of, you know, 6 or 7 of us, and we went around the room, we all wrote down stuff about each other that we liked about the other person, and then we had to sit and listen to it being read about ourselves, and we weren't allowed to respond, and we just had to receive it. And first of all 6 of us were in there bawling our eyes out. We spent just a few days together. It was very powerful. But it was also really hard to accept hearing those things. And so the law of receptivity is about being open to receive and accept. And I think that a lot of times we talk ourselves out of business